Hi, I'm Pattu from freefincal. AMFI, the Association of Mutual Funds of India, has decided to write off the 75% of Yes Bank shares that will be locked in for 3 years, write it off to down to zero or value it to zero for the entirety of the lock-in period. How will this affect mutual funds, especially index funds? So let's have a look at that. So I wrote that up today, and the as you may know, the S Bank restoration plan was announced on the 13th of March, and then in that they had said that if anybody holds more than 100 shares of S Bank, then they will be able to trade only 25% of it, and 75% of it will get locked out. Obviously, most mutual funds who have almost all mutual funds that hold S Bank will be having more than the minimum amount of shares, and this is the very first time this has happened. And S Bank is in the Nifty, and thankfully in the Nifty it's only about 0.2 0.17% or something like that, but still 75% of that could still mean lakhs and lakhs of shares. It's about 6 lakh shares for a UTI Nifty index fund. Now the point is that on the from the 18th of March, if I'm not wrong, let me just have a look at it. The NSE has said that just 2 days, right? So the NSE has said that from the 18th of March, the S Bank will be removed from the Nifty because it's no longer freely tradable. Therefore, it has to get out of the Nifty. It cannot be part of any index because it is not traded frequently enough. Now, this puts index funds in a fix. See, actively managed mutual funds, their portfolio is going to change according to the whims and fancies of the fund manager or the scheme mandate, whatever it is. So you can't, if some portion of the S Bank shares are going to get locked in, well, however way they handle it, it doesn't matter to you, the investor, because you will never be able to see the impact. But for an index fund, it makes a difference. So what they have done is they have decided that the locked in component, that is the 75% of the S Bank holding, will be set to a value of zero. This is not a segregated portfolio. This is not portfolio segregation. This is not side pocketing. This is a temporary write-off. In a bond, when they write down the bond, typically it will be a permanent write-down. But in this case, because it's a lock-in only for 3 years, and after 3 years, hopefully if everything goes on well, you should be able to sell it at the current market price or whatever price the government decides or the bank decides. It's a temporary write down, it's a temporary write off, and during this period, the locked in shares will have a value of zero. Now, after 3 years, when and if the government allows the sale of this locked in component, whoever held units as on 16th March, that is the current investors of the index fund, whoever held those units, proportionally they will get the locked in amount. Whatever amount it is, it will not be too much, but it will be a small amount. So for actively managed funds, it doesn't make any difference. You can't measure this impact, whether it will have an impact or not. But for index funds, it makes a difference. Now, how does it make a difference? You have to be careful. See, by writing down the value of S Bank, the logged in component, to zero, and and from 18th onwards, the remaining 25% also they have to sell. So from 16th to 18th, they have the 2 days window. They will sell it off as soon as possible, so that from 18th or from 19th March onwards, when the I'm talking about in the past, when the all this will come only in the next month's fact sheet. When Nifty no longer had S Bank, mutual funds, the index mutual funds, Nifty index mutual funds also should not have S Bank in their portfolio. That much the index funds will manage to do. That is not a big problem. But now the point is, by setting off the 75% locked in component to zero, they have ensured the fund itself will not have any kind of tracking error with respect to Nifty. With respect to Nifty, that they have made sure. But as an investor, for people who are currently invested in the Nifty index funds, they will have a difference in return when after 3 years the 75% component is free to be sold, and that sale will be done outside of the portfolio, and that proceeds will come to their bank account. There will be a difference between the index fund, the effective, including that payout, the effective index fund returns and the Nifty index, there will be a difference in return. So for the investor, there will be a difference in returns. There will be a tracking error, and this tracking error will be there whether that 75% S-Bank component is marked to market, that is whatever the market price you set it, or you set it to zero. It doesn't matter. For current investors, the deviation will always be there. Of course, it will be a small deviation. That's not a big problem. There's nothing to worry about it. But please recognize, whether a small deviation or big deviation is sheer luck. Just so lucky that the bank that defaulted was a bank that had very little exposure in the Nifty at the time of the problem. It is not a default, I would say. The bank that got into trouble, that's the correct word to use, excuse me. The bank that got into trouble, at the time it got into trouble, the exposure to Nifty was quite small. If it was 5% or 10%, it would have made a big difference for the index investor holding at the time, holding units at the time of the problem or the time of the lock-in. So by setting the 75% to zero, locked-in component to zero, the mutual funds have ensured that their side is clear. Their tracking errors will be zero. But don't get fooled by it. If you are holding index fund units, Nifty index fund units, as on date, as on 16th March, then there will be a small difference after 3 years when there is a payout of these shares made. So that much you have to be ready for. It's nothing to be worried about. But for the record, there will be a difference. Once more, let me say, please don't look at tracking errors. Tracking errors are based on the NAV of the mutual fund. It is also based on the NAV of the ETF. For an ETF especially, the NAV has no relevance because you buy at market price, you sell at market price. Tracking error should be calculated with respect to the price. The best thing to do is to use the price you sell, price you buy for the ETF and NAV for an index fund. Compare the returns point to point of the index fund or ETF with the price and compare it with the Nifty index. That is the real measure of tracking error. Don't go by the tracking error that is reported in the fact sheet or anywhere else, because tracking error depends on the time. If I measure tracking error for 1 year, it will be a different value. For 3 years, it will be a different value. So don't go by that. Don't get misled by tracking error. Better to compare point to point returns. So those are the two things I wanted to say in this video. I'll catch you again later. Bye-bye.